Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Amy Carr-Hilton and I know firsthand the hardships of figuring out how to recover from chronic pain and other chronic symptoms on our own. So I'm inviting you here to explore our pain mastery together because it is you who has the greatest power to influence your own pain healing. And I really want to share this experience with you. So if you don't know me yet, I am Amy Carr-Hilton. I'm a chronic pain recovery coach and a massage therapist and a yoga therapist. But that's not all I am. I'm also someone who struggled from a young teen with neuroplastic symptoms. So clients always want to know what my symptoms and diagnoses were so they can compare their experience. And this is understandable, but I just want to preface this with saying it does not matter what or where your symptoms are or how intense or how constant or not constant they are. If they behave as neuroplastic, as a neurocircuit-induced symptom, then that is all that matters when it comes to neuroplastic healing. So my history of symptoms might be very different than yours, but I bet you'll find the process in and out of it will be very similar. Now, I have had some trauma, some of the big T's, the big impactful events that we tend to think about when we think of trauma, but my neuroplastic symptom story starts before all of that. So I was born with an obstruction in my left ureter, the tube that goes from the kidney to the bladder. And when I was young, the age of 8 to 9, I was in a lot of pain from my kidney swelling as it filled with fluid, which had nowhere to go. So I had interoceptive data going to my brain, probably from in utero, that there was a problem in my body, something my brain was watchful of, but I consciously had no idea about it until I started having pain and it became life-threatening. So I believe there was already a watchfulness to my protective brain, but medical trauma was also a huge part of the development of my danger neural pathways, which led to my protective alerts or symptoms. So it was a long time for me as a child of feeling not heard by my doctor, by seeing that even my mom, who was responsible for my survival, was not being taken seriously. And I had fear of needles because I had nurses coming at me with them, and I was afraid of the eventual surgery that actually saved my life. Now, this may not be the same for you, but medical trauma is a pretty common factor among us neuroplastic warriors. At some point, we feel at odds and uncared for by the medical system that is supposed to be there to help us, supposed to help us survive. And that can be taken in by our emotional brain center, our limbic system, as trauma. So let's fast forward a bit. I had a fantastic childhood. I was maybe a little more sensitive than others in my family. I come from a family of farmers, loggers, military, and teachers, hard workers, salt of the earth type people. And I know that I created a tough girl persona in order to fit in. So the family business on my mom's side is an abattoir and butcher shop, which we call the slaughterhouse. And I remember as a child feeling so strange to others in my family when I just felt softer, different, more sensitive, and especially when I turned vegetarian at 12 years old. But I just felt so strongly for the animals that it hurt me to be part of their suffering. Now, this sensitivity, compassion, empathy is another common factor among us neuroplastic warriors, and it shows up in different ways for all of us. You might not be vegetarian or care that much about animals, but it's common for us to be the ones that choose a career or a personal role in caring for others. And maybe we go into social work, nursing, or rescue professions, or we take on the responsibility for taking care of family members who fall ill. Now, it's also common for us to find ways of hiding that sensitivity if it's not a trait that's celebrated in our household or among our friends. And I placed a big emphasis on being physically strong, and I now know that this was my way of trying to fit into a family that valued working hard and being tough in the face of adversity. But hiding my sensitive side was teaching my protective brain from a young age that I wasn't good enough as I was, and that there was a risk of me not being accepted by the very people who were responsible for my survival. Now, Whether there was a real risk to my being accepted or our being accepted or not, it actually doesn't matter to our protective brains. All our brain needs to know is that we worry about it, and the danger neural pathways begin for protective pain alerts. So let's fast forward again. When I was 14, I was harassed. I was bullied by someone at school, and my protective brain did the best it could for me, and it actually sent me into a freeze state. Now, this can show up in different ways. It can look like melancholy, depression. It can look like muscle and joint stiffness, tension or pain, migraines, changes in reproductive cycles, or like in my case, psychogenic seizures, so unexplained seizures. In my case, my protective brain wanted so badly for me to not have to experience the emotions that came with that bullying, that feeling of not being accepted or fitting in, and actually fearing physical harm in my case, that it literally made me pass out and convulse on a few occasions throughout that year, my 14th year. And then the seizures, which were never medically explained, just went away when that bully of a person finished school and was totally gone from my life. So then re-enter kidney pain from my childhood. I had no trouble with pain around my kidney since I had the surgery and healed at 9 years old. But when I was 16, I started practicing yoga. And I found that side bending to the right gave me searing pain and nausea to the point where I actually vomited until I slowly worked on feeling safer with that action. And this was a pivotal moment for me. I didn't really understand what was happening on a scientific level, of course, I was 16, but I had the experience of recognizing that sometimes side bending hurt and made me feel sick. But then sometimes I would do that movement without thinking about it and have no pain or nausea. And I very much thought that the problem was from my scar and surgery, but there was just a little bit of recognition that it didn't make sense that it was a physical problem if it was so inconsistent. So I started learning that through slowly exposing myself to that trigger for pain, that side bending, while telling myself I was safe, I could decondition that protective alert. And maybe you've had these little experiences too, or maybe you're just open to becoming aware of them, of letting the fear and worry go just enough so you can start to see your physical reality as safe. And by this, I mean the actual state of your physical body, not the what-if scenarios you're bound to worry over if you've been suffering with unexplained pain. You're seeing your body through a lens of safety instead of danger. Now, I just want to say that this was just where I can look back to and see the start of the 4 elements coming into play. It's taken my whole 40 plus years to really understand what's happening and to be able to live the 4 elements of care. And honestly, this is still a work in progress, and I think it always will be. Neuroplastic recovery means feeling safe in my body, feeling free to be active, social, to have fun and live the life I want to live. It doesn't mean I never have pain, but it does mean that when I feel a protective alert, I know when I need to go see a doctor or when my body needs time to heal. And I'm not afraid because I know my body is a great healer, as it's meant to be. And I also know when a protective alert is neuroplastic in nature, and I feel safe and confident in working with that so the symptom of the alert can go away quickly. So since I started feeling curious about the pain experience at 16, I've had many other neuroplastic symptoms and actual real physical injuries. I've struggled with chronic headaches that I was sure were from staring at a screen for too long, or poor nutrition or hydration, or worried that they were something more sinister. I've had knee and shoulder injuries that I believed months or years later were recurring injuries, only to find out they were neural patterns my brain learned as effective protective alerts and had nothing to do with my old original injuries. I've had stomach pain and ulcers that I thought were from food sensitivities or parasites. I've even had random foot pain with no mechanism of injury that seemed to show up out of the blue, but actually, when I look back, it started not so randomly while I was struggling to fit into a new town, a new relationship, a new job, all the newness. And when I look back, none of this is surprising to me, that my brain felt the need to alert me to my emotional discomfort while I was trying my best to push past and not feel just to get shit done. And maybe you can relate to some of my story, And since you're here, I bet you can. You might just be thinking, but what about pelvic pain or burning pain or diarrhea or a diagnosis like fibromyalgia, frozen shoulder, IBS, CRPS? Well, let me just tell you that through all of this experiential learning, I've also been studying anatomy, physiology, and neuroscience to understand better what's happening. And all of these symptoms or diagnoses of clusters of symptoms are the exact same issue of a sensitized central nervous system. We call this central sensitization, and it means we can heal, all of us, we can heal in the same way. So hopefully my long-winded sharing helps you understand your own experience a little more. Just know that any adversity we face in our lives, even what we may see as small things, especially when we are dependent on others to survive, they pose a potential risk of creating these danger neural pathways to protective alerts through pain or other chronic symptoms. But the very term neuroplastic means those neural pathways are moldable, and we can influence the shift from danger to safety neural pathways if we can just establish a strong foundation in my 4 elements of care and take that forward into how we show up for ourselves in our lives. So we're going to establish that foundation so you can move forward in your healing, whether that's on your own or working with me in my 3-week self-study program or my 12-week supported program. We're going to work on that.